course, the president seems to be on the chopping block at the moment after some comments he made concerning our IMF deal. Of course, we've received our first tranche of some $600 million out of the $3 billion that we're receiving from the IMF. And the president has revealed plans with regards to what we can do to return to the international market as soon as possible to borrow to fund infrastructural projects. And he was speaking at the Qatar Africa Economic Forum in Doha. And it's an interesting statement that he made concerning going back to the capital markets, knowing very well that we had been locked out of the capital market because of how much we had borrowed and how much we owed, the debts that we were saddled with. And so it was interesting to find out that he would make such a statement, especially on the back of an earlier statement that was made a week ago by the finance minister, that maybe it's about time that we look internally and will not necessarily have to rush to the international market at the moment. Let's listen to both of them, and we'll juxtapose that to what one Dr. Theo had said with regards to that.
There's no rush to go back to the international capital markets. Our expectation is that in managing to go back to the international capital markets, our expectation is that in managing our expenditure and increasing our revenue, we'll have the resources to it. Working towards the capital market is important because we then get our ratings up and make the country more attractive for foreign investors, especially FDI. But rest assured that no one is rushing to the international capital markets at this juncture.
Position us to be able to go back into the international capital market, which had been a source of funding for us for the first 3 or 4 years of our government.
Do you see that happening soon? Because I know your finance minister said there's no rush to get back.
There's no rush to get back, but nevertheless, obviously, why not? Can we not take advantage of global savings? It makes a lot of sense to be able to do that. And the sooner we can do it, better.
Started the process of restructuring your external debt. We only got financing assurances, but the hard work of restructuring that debt is what lies ahead of us. And I think that is what ought to be our number one priority. In the past, and it is certainly true that we had to rely on borrowing, taking these Eurobonds and other commercial, paper or debt to support our budget because we had a deficit that had to be financed. But we are not in a position now as a country to even go to the market. And I dare say that nobody in that market, none of the people whom we owe currently, would be in a position to even give us any money should we decide to even go borrow at the moment. So the days when we used to go in, borrow, and get money relatively, cheaply to come and do one government project or the other, or to refinance existing debt, for me, are long gone. And from where I sit, we cannot go to the market, at least for the next 3 years. We've got to rebuild the finances of this country, number one.
So that's Dr. Theo A. Champon. He says that if we're actually thinking of going back to the capital market to borrow, that will take another 3 years. Dr. Botchwey, let me come to you first. I mean, how do you juxtapose what the finance minister said about a week ago, that maybe we should find ways to, create some revenue so we can fund our own infrastructure projects, as against what the president is saying, that maybe take advantage of the savings that we're going to make now so we can quickly go back to the international market? Then Dr. Theo Champon says it will take us another 3 years maybe before we can go back and borrow.
Yes, I think even the IMF says we can only go to the international market in 2027, which is, even the program is for 3 years. So even after the program, we still have to wait for a year or so before we can go to the international market to borrow. And then we've been talking about how borrowing has brought us to this end. This government before 2016, we're talking about the former president borrowing too much. I don't see the reason why we still have to go to the international market in our current predicament. the president has an opportunity to talk about how he's going to cut down expenditures, reduce his government size, how to review some of these policies, giving freebies, and all those things. But he chose to talk about going to the international capital market again to borrow. And then Ratu was talking about how President Kufuor has a lot of visions and aspirations that to help the whole of Africa. Yes, the president has policies like Ghana Beyond Aid and all those things, but how to implement it is a problem. He has the vision, but the implementation of those visions, we haven't seen them in the past 7 years, in the past 6 years of his governance. He has good ideas like taking the Ghana from the Gazette economy to production and one district, one factory, and all this. We're good policies. But I go and build small factories that doesn't even impact us. Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire produces a lot of cocoa, but we don't do any value added. In Belgium, they don't produce any cocoa, but the kind of revenue they get from cocoa products like chocolate and all those things is far above what we, the leading producers of cocoa, have. So what we have to do is to really do investment, import substitution, produce things in the country, and stop this importing a whole lot of things into the country.
But what does that say? Okay, you carry on.
Oh, please.
Okay, I was going to ask you that. So what does that say about the president and his governance at the moment? Because if you look at the Eurobonds and when they are maturing, in fact, the last one is expected to mature in 2029. That's April. It was secured in April 2021, some $1 billion. It will mature in 2029. This is out of about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different ones that we were able to secure with different maturity dates. So with this in mind, how then does the president go ahead to say that even though, I mean, of course, we know this, is the situation at the moment, and we haven't completed our conversations with all the, the Parisian Club and all the other international markets lenders. We have not completed our conversation with them as to how we'll finance the debt at the moment. How then do we go and say on an international platform that we're looking at going back to the international market as soon as possible? What do you make of this?
We currently even have a problem of if we default our loans to the Chinese, they're going to take over our energy bills and then the revenues from our
gold,
minerals.
Yes.
And then gold, and then you are there talking about going to borrow again. It doesn't really make sense to me.
Okay.
Actually.
Let me come to Lerato. Really all right. Lerato. I mean, you need to explain to us because Ghanaians are asking. I'm asking that with what the president said as against what the finance minister said, who should we go with at this moment, especially knowing where we find ourselves?
Bella, probably if we put the issues in context to get the import of where the president is coming from. And I don't think what the president said, it's so different from what in essence, what the finance minister said. I mean, we've come a long way as a country. I mean, when you go to the 50s, the 1950s, a project like the Akosombo Dam was built with a World Bank loan. Then we're doing a lot of these multilaterals, bilaterals, and all that. I mean, a developing country at that level. Then debt stocks was not an issue. So borrowing was one of the borrowing from multilaterals and bilaterals, and most of these things also came with grant components then because of our status then. Come to the early 70s, we had to resort to, I mean, the economy was not so we had to resort to internally. That led to the printing of money and all that. That took inflation to one of the highest we've ever had. That's about 123% then. I mean, fast track to early 2000s was pretty bad. We started looking internally, right? Looking internally with T-bills, the 90-day, 128-day, and all other local things. But that was also not sustainable because our needs are quite substantial for the kind of development we want. I mean, in 2007, I think it was in 2007 that we had our first bond, international bond. So we've come a long way. We've been on and on. We succeeded in getting to lower middle income. And definitely once you are no longer developing, you are now like on the borderline of developing and a developed country. Definitely the courtesies, the freebies you used to get, the grants would definitely reduce. It's like coming of age. Your parents feed you till you start working. It's up to you to do that. We went HIPIC, that's early 2000, because of the high levels of our debt and all that. We got some debt reliefs and all that. And that was managed prudently to get to where we got to. So from about 2007 through to 2009, we got that status. So that opened us up to the international market. So now we're not just dealing with multilaterals and bilateral, we're also on the open market. So we could borrow, right? We took an economy in 2017 that had gone into distress due to issues that we had then to IMF. So in 2016, we signed on to an IMF program, got out or gave it had an extension, got out. I mean, economy was picking up and all. But anytime you want to, even as individuals, when we want to borrow, we look at the cheapest form, the size of it and all that, the tenor of the loan and all that. And the Eurobonds came as a better alternative, so we used that.
Okay.
But with all that happened, with the external shocks, some of our internal problems, we are where we are now. The finance minister, what he said in essence, and for me, I've said this times without number on set. Usually these conversations are held in a context. So if you just pick a section of it, for us, it's very difficult. But what the finance minister...
Give us the full context.
No, what I'm saying, I haven't listened to the full discussion.
Okay.
So, but what I'm saying is that these conversations are had within, they hold these conversations within a context, because when you're going for a program, there's a theme, there's a focus and all that. There are topics that they speak to. So sometimes when you don't have the full conversation. But with what the finance minister said there's no rush in going back to the international market, because apart from going to IMF for the balance of budgetary support and all that, we have also put in measures internally. I mean, a number of our tax laws have been amended. The targets for GRA have been increased. SOEs and other government agencies that raise IGF. That's another source of revenue, domestic revenue are being enhanced, oil revenue and all that. All those things come to play. So domestically, there are lots of measures, expenditure cuts, cuts in discretionary spending and all that. All those measures have been put in place. Then when you also come to the debt side and all that, we are getting support from the IMF that is coming in tranches also. So if the finance minister says there's no rush, I mean, that is not saying fundamentally we will never go back to the...
Yes, but he says that we need to find ways by which we can generate revenue internally so we can fund...
But then the presidency definitely, but at a point, with all that we need as a developing country and all that, with all that we need, definitely at a point we'll have to go back to and borrow for. We can, until we get to where we are going to get to sustainable levels of domestic resources. Even the developed countries, the most developed countries borrow.
Yeah, but what happens to the mantra Ghana beyond aid then?
Come again.
What happens to the mantra Ghana beyond aid?
Bella, Ghana beyond aid doesn't necessarily means that you won't be seeking support or seeking other resources from other places. I mean, even if you're going to build manufacturing plants and all that, people come in as investors. They are definitely not Ghanaians. People come with all kinds of support. You definitely need support. But, I mean, once you go beyond aid, you take things, you take monies on your terms, not on the terms of the person bringing the
That's
aid
what
to
Ghana
you.
Beyond Aid
You get
means.
it. Those are some of the
So
components
that means
of that.
that we were still going to
get it.
borrow back on our terms. Is that what you're saying the president meant by Ghana Beyond Aid?
Come again.
Is that what you're
They are
saying the
different,
president
but
meant by Ghana
fundamentally,
Beyond Aid?
no, what I say, you keep referring to Ghana Beyond. I'm saying that even if you go beyond aid, what is aid? I mean, in the essence of it, what is aid? I mean, people bring you support because they have found an opportunity probably in your economy, or they have a program or a project for themselves that needs you in it. They come with their own terms. But when you are in a country where you are, any support that is coming comes on your terms. So you have the capacity to accept whatever support is coming in or not, but it will be on your terms. But sometimes if you are desperate enough, you go take support, take investment, that doesn't necessarily inure to the benefit of the people of this country. So we need to put some of these things in context. Definitely. I mean, once you stabilize and do all that. But the key thing that I excited is the discipline. And that doesn't only go for government and all that. It's all of us.
But it should start from the head.
Doctor,
I mean, what is the president's concern with regards to even cutting down on, his appointees and making sure that government also cuts down on expenditure to a large extent than what we have seen before we even have a conversation about even going back to the international market? That conversation needed to be had.
There's a process of doing these things. And like I said, they've been, even before we went to IMF, there are a lot of measures that were put in place in the 2023 budget. One of the key ones was the moratorium on employment in the public sector.
Okay.
Hitherto, it was a condition that IMF comes with. But the president ensured that was already in our budget. There was a cut on a discretionary payment that I've said. There was a 30% cut in salaries of appointees and government.
But no cut on number of appointees, which is something a lot of people have raised.
There was a cut on fuel allocations for appointees. There's been a lot of measures and all that.
Many have said those are insignificant. If we're really looking at how much we're trying to cut down on expenditure, then those are insignificant.
You have to start from somewhere.
Okay.
You have to start from somewhere. When you even go to the forex issues, there was an auctioning that was done purposely for those oil, those who import oil into the country. There was a ban on giving support to people who are importing things that we have in this country from getting forex. And so there are a lot of measures that are being put in place to make sure that we are disciplined enough, we are focused enough to do things the way they're supposed to do, so we can get our economy back to where it's supposed to be.
Well, let's take a look at how much we have. Our external debt holders as of September 2022, how much it is that we owe all these people. So China is at the top with 1.7 billion US dollars. Then the Eurobonds account for 13.1 billion of the monies that we owe. Multilateral, 8.1 billion US dollars. Other creditors, $3.2 billion. And the Paris Club, $1.9 billion. We're talking about Eurobonds at this point. If we can move on to the next slide to take a look at when they're maturing. So the first one that we received was in August 2013. That was $148.80 million. It's maturing this year. The next one that we received in February 2020 will mature in 2026. If you go through all the list, in fact, there are two of them that will mature in 2029. That's the one that we received in May 2018. That's the $1 billion. And another one in April 2021. $1 billion. Both of them will mature in 2029, which is why the question is being asked that we have not satisfied all these requirements necessarily, and yet we're already talking about running back to the international market to start borrowing. Margaret, what do you make of this?
Thank you, Bella. And yesterday when I read some of the portals that said that the president was asking or saying we will be going back to borrow or to the international market soon. Bella, in the first place, the borrower, you do not determine when to go back to the market. Secondly, the IMF reports on Ghana stated that by 2027, our debt to GDP should be around 86.1, which still do not qualify us to go back to the international market to borrow. Also, Bella, we need to build market confidence. How to restructure our debts, the internal things that we are supposed to do. You see, the IMF is looking at our problems with two lenses. One, not able to raise enough revenues. And secondly, our expenditure, where he brought government's flagship programs not giving us value for money. But why is President Akufo-Addo in a hurry to go and borrow, whilst the reports on from IMF on us is telling us that we cannot go back to the international market until 2027? Bella, does President Akufo-Addo read at all?
Why do you ask that? Because again, when he made this statement, the presenter said that, but your finance minister said there's no rush, and he also reiterated and said, yes, there's no rush.
The report on us says that we, even by 2027, our debt to GDP still do not qualify us, about 86.1%. So if he had read the report, I don't think the president would have made such statements. Well, I've said on your platform that even the reason why Professor Frimpong Watson's report was on the president's desk for over 20 months could tell that the president does not read.
You cannot say that for a fact.
But look at the statement. The presenter was even correcting him. If he had read the report, he wouldn't have said this. Bella, these things are becoming one too many there. The international embarrassment, it is becoming one too many. You see, this president or this government has an insatiable appetite for borrowing. He made the statement that for the past 3 to 4 years, we've been borrowing to govern the country. So all that they can do is to borrow. Bella, Ghanaians must appreciate the fact that these people do not have anything good for this country. When they were campaigning, Bella, they told us that they will not borrow. But for borrowing, their 8-year-old children could govern Ghana. Bella, you come, and now, even in the midst of all this crisis, where you do not even qualify, you spoke out of ignorance because you have the borrowing quest in you. You are still talking about borrowing again.
But you listened to Lerato explain what Ghana Beyond Aid could mean.
Bella, in the last 6 years, this government, from the Iribon alone, as you said, is about 13 billion. In the last 6 years. The NDC, in 8 years, borrowed just 3.5 billion, yet there are tangibles, earth-shattering projects that you could touch. You would touch and know that this is what the NDC and the President Mahama did. We have borrowed over 13 billion from the international markets. And Bella, we are still talking about borrowing. Because the president wants to borrow and be in luxurious jets. He wants to borrow and invest in cathedral halls.
But that's not what he said,
But
Margaret.
the IMF is telling us that our problem is our expenditure. Our problem is our expenditure. Why is it not focusing on cutting expenditure? You're talking about taking salaries of the flagship programs of the government. Look at this cathedral money. Over 400 million Ghana cedis spent on the whole. I think the president should come home. These are the kind of things that he needs to think about and talk about. At this point that we are all crying, look at what this IMF conditionality has brought to us. A freeze on net employment. That if Ghana is TV3, you cannot employ unless somebody resigns or the person is no more. It is an IMF conditionality.
It's in the budget, I think.
Please, let me finish. No. When you can write it down, please.
I'll let you.
IMF conditionality, freeze on net employment. You cannot employ. Bella, we are increasing our electricity tariffs. It's an IMF conditionality. All the tariffs are going up, yet salaries are not going up. You see, governance is about the people, Bella. This condition that you have brought us in, President Akufo-Addo and Dr. Bawumia, you have brought your citizens in. We are going through excruciating pains. We are enduring this. And salaries, you cannot also increase salaries. And President Nana Addo still has the appetite to borrow. Bella, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh. The president still wants to borrow and live like an Arabian king.
No,
so
but he says that we'll try as much as possible to maintain the discipline which is required.
Borrowing should be the last thing on his mind.
But he says that we'll maintain the discipline which is required.
Borrowing should be the last thing on his mind. And you know, the Minister of State at the presidency, Amin Anta, also mentioned the same thing. Then the finance minister came to, massage it. It is that this government still has it at the back of their mind that they want to go back to the international market and borrow. But the point is that the president spoke out of ignorance.
How?
He did not even know what he's talking about. He did not read the report. He does not even appreciate.
You are not in his office. You cannot state emphatically that he did not read the report. So
the
you are conjecturing.
The gentleman doesn't read. And he also doesn't appreciate the hardship his citizens are going through. He has lost touch with the citizens. Else, the last thing that could come on his mind is borrowing. But everything is going up, yet you cannot increase salaries. You are not thinking about how to cushion the pains that your citizens are going through, how to commensurate with them. You are borrowing to do what again? Bella, you have borrowed over 13 billion. You couldn't do anything with it. Now we are begging for 3 billion within 3 years, and you are still thinking of going back to the international market. Bella, I asked myself, because I know there are other countries who were still talking to China to forgive them their debt. So when this IMF deal went through, on Monday I was asking one journalist that, what did we give to China to agree? What did we give to China? What was the agreement that China could even accept to sit down with the Paris Club and agree? What did we give out? And now they are all coming out. And this government is still not remorseful. This government still hasn't come out to apologize for taking us. The president himself has said that in the past 4 years of his government, aside the 2017 where he enjoyed the measures and the discipline President Mahama put in place, his governance has been borrowing throughout. Meanwhile, he promised the Ghanaian that he will not borrow. This president has not come out to apologize, and he's still talking about borrowing again. Bella, I do not understand.
Okay. Dr. Botchwey, we're talking about the first thing being the fact that we need to restructure our debt, because we're told that about 60% of the monies that we need to really fix our economy will come from debt restructuring. In your estimation, beyond that, what are some of the key things we need to put in place to ensure that not only do we bring our economy back on track, but we don't go back to the international market to borrow? Maybe internally we can fund some of our projects?
Yes, I believe the main thing the government has to do right now is to reduce expenditure. Reduce expenditure on some projects, some flagship programs like the free SHS, as they've alluded to, that they are going to review. Reduce the size of government. I read somewhere that next month they are going to do something in the UK, and about over 100 people are going there for just to lure people to come and invest in Ghana. Those are all expenses that are not needed like right now. Only a few people can go and do things like that. And then also try and move away from using our monies to do capital investment stuff, not to set up companies that can do real production like revamping the oil refinery so that we don't have to import oil, because we have oil. We produce more oil for the country, but the oil that we produce, we export them and then we import refined oil. These are things that we have to channel our resources in, like to be self-sufficient in refining the oil that we use in the country will be a very good boost to the economy. So move away from imports and do more on import substitution. So produce a lot of things in the country. Those are things that we have to do to help the economy. But to also go back and go back and borrow is something that we are not supposed to do at this point in time.
I mean, to be fair, the president did say that there was going to be some rigorous expenditure cuts as well so that we can meet the IMF conditionalities. And so to a large extent, he does admit that, yes, maybe expenditure is too high and we're going to cut down on that, right?
Yes, but it looks like it's all talk and no action. So the president will say, we are going to cut down on expenses, but we don't see those impacts. I also was talking about 30% cut in income, that they were going to reduce fuel allowances, and all those things are just minimum. You have to cut down on appointees, cut down on even the ministry, make some of the ministries. I read somewhere that the Forestry Commission didn't have any deputies prior to when Sir John was around. After Sir John, the commission had 3 more deputies. All these things are excesses. We have to reduce all these kind of appointments and then focus more on import substitution, for instance, creating things that will make the country self-sufficient. And then find ways to also get some taxes, workable taxes. So there's a huge deficit in our tax revenue. And then you think about renting, and then rental income is something that we have to channel our resources in getting those kind of taxes from landowners, from house owners, and also property taxes are things that we have to work towards getting those kind of taxes from and then even when you go to the market, they just come and weigh maybe the market people don't have accounts that you can go and maybe tax their profit and all those things. They have to institute ways that we can get taxes, not you send people to go there and they just look at how the shop is and then they just give you a tax rate that you have to pay. And sometimes those tax rate that they pay is very, very minimum. So you have to find ways in getting taxes from the informal sector and just stop increasing the taxes of just the formal sector.
Okay, let me bring Lerato in because I saw her shaking her head at a point when you were speaking.
I'm finding it a bit difficult to follow what Dr. Botchwey is saying. In one breath, let's reduce expenditure. In another breath, let's invest in capital expenditure and all that. I was thinking he was also going to raise issues about how to raise revenue because you need revenue to do all this capital expenditure and all that. And I don't know whether he's been following, but with the property tax, I mean, the GRA and the local government institutions are doing a lot in that area. It was launched a couple of months back and a lot of rigorous activities are going on. But coming back to Mago, I mean, if Mago says His Excellency the President doesn't read, then comprehension is a big problem for Mago.
Why?
With all due respect. I mean, what did the president say we are going back to the international commercial market, capital market next month or next year and all that? I mean, these are conversations we are having and all that. A lot, this is a man, the IMF deal was not agreed by word of mouth. It was a document properly scrutinized. And I don't think if there was anything untoward or anything that wouldn't bring our economy back to what it should be, I don't think the IMF would have approved it. And they have people sitting, they have someone responsible for this country who is on a day-to-day basis. But let's go into some of the things that the money that we've borrowed so far. I mean, Mago and her and the NDC are the ones who are fixated with airports. One of the thing is the Tamale Airport. I mean, you've seen pictures of it. I don't know whether you've been to Tamale lately, but when you stand at the old terminal, you see it there. Phase 3 of Kumasi Airport redevelopment. When you come to roads, I don't know whether you've been to Obechebi Lamte lately. The Obechebi Lamte drainage network and interchange. Domi Kwabenya Kitase Trunk Road. It was, we all know we have a very good university around that area. That was there. Then the design, fabrication, supply, installation of 50-number composite bridges and related civil works, rehabilitation and auxiliary infrastructure of Kumasi Inner Ring Road and adjacent streets, Accra Intelligent Traffic Management System.
Okay.
Eastern Corridor Road Development. Construction of phase 1 of Tema Flower Road.
I'm not sure we can go through the entire
No, that's what I just want to give you a few of the and even when you go to, this is just for the main one. When you go to the Sino Hydro Bay, there are a number of them. Construction of Prestia Township and Cape Coast Inner City roads. A total of 32 kilometers roads in Cape Coast and 22 kilometers of inner city roads. When you go rehabilitation of Akemoda of Wasi Road, 38 kilometers. Construction of Hoho Jasekai Dodo Pepesu Road. The second phase, I don't have it here. But construction of Accra Inner City Roads, construction of Kumasi and Mampo Inner City Road, construction of Tamale Interchange, construction of the PTC Roundabout Interchange in Sekondi Takoradi, the first interchange in the western part of the country. So it's not like the money has been taken and nothing has been done. So if Dr. Botchwey talks about infrastructure and all that, look, movement is the big deal. There's a lot of trade that goes in. We need hospitals, we need education infrastructure, we need roads for commuting, cutting down times of doing business and all that. There's a lot that is being done.
Okay.
There's a lot of discipline needed right now, and that commitment has been made. I don't think IMF, the Chinese government, the Paris Club will be coming on board if commitments haven't been made to bring us back. Ideally, this is not where we should be getting to. But the external shocks were quite a lot, and it has affected the whole world. It's not only Ghana. And
So
when it
for
comes
us-
to Eurobond and all that, you're over 15 African countries. And when you're going to borrow, you look at the interest rate, you look at the payment period, you look at the size, the quantity of money that is available to you. All those things are considered before you go and borrow.
So we will surely go back.
Definitely.
We will surely go back
but
to borrow.
definitely if we're going to do all the things we need, I
We
mean,
have to go and
once
borrow.
you are able to stabilize your domestic things and put all the disciplinary measures in place. I mean, but the only thing is that once we get this stabilized, like I said the other time, this should be the last time we should be going to IMF after 17 times and the president is committed
I've
to
heard
that.
economists
You
say
get
that
it?
with the way things are going, we're likely even to go back to the IMF faster than we think we would. Again.
Well, I wouldn't be a doomsday prophet, if I may, and I don't want to be a pessimist.
Okay.
I mean, man proposes, God disposes. But if we are going to do things together, the gatekeepers are going to do what they are supposed to do. Citizens are going to follow queue. Government is going to fulfill all its commitments, which we all hope we do. We shouldn't be going back to the IMF.
But there's a plan
And
to
we all know,
review.
but we shouldn't sit down and wait. Margot shouldn't sit down and think that if she has to prophesy doom all the time just because their campaign has started and all they are interested in is coming to winning power and probably taking us back to IMF. That is not.
Is that what she's doing? Is she being a doomsayer or she's speaking the reality
I mean,
to the facts on the ground?
What Margot
because
is,
clearly, sorry to cut you, but clearly there are lots of things that people said, a lot of economists and major stakeholders said, even about your flagship programs and the need for you to review it. I remember that Free SHS, clear example, there was an issue of whether review meant cancel or it actually meant relooking at the structure and all of that. We've seen it stated clearly in the IMF documents that even for Free SHS, it was wrongly targeted. Okay, now we're hearing from the information minister who's saying that, yes, we're going to go ahead and review our major flagship programs.
Bella, what's the meaning?
Why
of,
did
what's
you
the
have
meaning
to
of
wait
review?
till the IMF
What's the
said it?
meaning of
Because
review?
you tell us, because
What's the meaning of
there's
review?
A,
I mean, when
I
you
remember
review,
the information minister
when you are
said that at the
reviewing,
time when former President Mahama, hold on,
yes.
at the time when former President Mahama had said that when he comes into office, he would review the Free SHS. He said that for him, reviewing meant cancellation. So is that what it means in this case?
He said for him reviewing meant
Well, the
cancellation.
information minister said that if the
but
former
if
president
someone,
says we're going to review, then it means cancellation.
If I
so is that
come-
what it means for
Bella,
your party and your government at the moment as well, if you
Bella,
say you review?
If I keep telling you that, I mean, just for argument's sake, I say, oh, your kind of hosting or moderating this session is bad. It's not, you're not doing a good job. When I come and review it, definitely. I mean, you know that you'll be ousted if I get the opportunity to come. So with all the things the former president said
it is not
about
bad, though.
No. I said for the sake. I mean, you're doing a good job. I mean, you're fantastic at what you do. But just for the sake of argument, you know that you'll be ousted the moment I take over to do what I want to do. This is a former president who was got any opportunity he got to run down the free SHS policy. So, I mean, definitely if such a person says, I'm coming to review, you must be scared. But I mean, review in a sense of the word. I mean, you can't run a program without evaluating it at every point in time. You can't run you can't have a project or a program or formulate a policy and not be evaluating and reviewing it periodically to make it better. For me, coming from a rural community, coming from a region that the former president comes from, that is almost virtually last in everything when it comes to rankings, education, health, and everything. I don't think free SHS is bad. I think it's one of the best things that has happened to. No, it's one of the best things that has happened to education in this country. And we reviewing it and making it better. Because look at the enrollment alone. All these children, the over 1.4 million children who hitherto would have either been on farms, would have either been on fishing boats and all that, being in school. So even if the person is done with SHS and decides that I'm going into business, at least the fundamental communication, expression in the main language in this country will not be a big issue for us. You're looking at the quality of even artisans.
But do you agree then?
Even the better side of it is even the free TVET.
Okay.
You get it. So your artisans, your technical people come with a certain level of quality. So reviewing it to make it better is not something that anybody should
So do you then agree with the IMF when they say that it was poorly targeted with regards to the free SHS?
I need to read the full
Let me read that part
the whole
for you.
thing.
So this is on page 12, and maybe when you have time, you can go and look at it. Third paragraph, second point, on a % of GDP on education with good results in terms of enrollments, but poor learning outcomes. The flagship program, Free SHS, which covers the full cost of secondary education, has helped increase enrollment, but is poorly targeted.
I'm a believer in the statement that if you empty your purse into your head, nobody can take it away from you. Bella, we've had programs in this country, like scholarship programs and all that were initially targeted at brilliant and needy students, but it turned out going to all that. But when it comes to basic education, I mean, I don't see who you're leaving out. We could be having this conversation if this policy had been extended to private schools. Then we could be having that conversation. But once it's in public schools, schools run by the taxpayers' money, I don't think, with all due respect, it was wrongly targeted.
You don't think so?
I don't think so.
Okay. Margot, what do you say to this?
Bella, you know, the MPP doesn't listen. President Nana-Addo and Alhaji Bawumia, they do not listen. And that is why all we told them, because they never listened, that is why we are here. If you are doing propaganda, Bella, you're a PR person. Always make sure that the reality is very close to you so that you don't run into crisis. And that is why they are here. The president sitting on that platform, making those comments, that Laura too is telling me how difficult is comprehension. Doesn't she know that the president has a term of office? The gentleman is exiting next year. So if he sits on that platform and says we will be going back to the international market, and you are telling me how difficult is comprehension, the man has just 1 year. And the IMF report has stated that we need to build this investor confidence. We need to restructure our debt. There are a lot of things, and these things takes time. And even in the 2027, the report is giving us, it's saying that our debt to GDP will still not come back to the 55%. So reasonably, Mr. President has just 1 year. So if he says he wants to take us there, he is not going to preside over the governance of this country by 2027 and beyond. So definitely it is within his speculated time. And Bella, from 2023 to even December 2024, we still cannot have access to the international market. That is why I will reiterate and amplify it in a day that President Nana Addo does not read. He is just sitting at the Jubilee House wasting our time. He doesn't read. He spoke out of ignorance, and the presenter or the host was correcting him. Yet,
you
as
are
usual,
conjecturing.
no,
and
Bella,
that's why I keep
yet,
saying that.
No,
you
yet,
don't know what he did before he went on that interview. We cannot say for a fact on this platform that he didn't
Yet,
read.
I am saying it that from the way this president looks and the way he talks and the way he answers questions, where he's caught unawares, the way he cannot, answer questions properly, the gentleman does not read. Why? Don't I pay him? If he's not doing the work well, can't I say it? I take care of President Akufo-Addo. And if he's not getting the job done, why should I pamper him? The gentleman doesn't read. And he's causing us a lot of embarrassment, especially when he goes out there. Our international image. Bella, branding is very important as a country. Top of the mind awareness. A president always goes to sit on international platforms and always making utterances so ignorantly, and you don't want us to talk about it. The gentleman does not read. He has a time. He has a term. And by 2024, he will exit. So if he's saying we are going back to the international market to borrow, even if it's on December 7, 2024, we still do not have access according to what the macroeconomic, the fundamentals do not support what he's saying. The fundamentals do not support it. So what is this, Margot and her people, and what is this? We are doing fast checks here. Bella, this is the country we are running. And it's unfortunate we are being run by ignorant people. When COVID-19 came, there was a certain reverend minister who said we are being ruled by ignoramuses. And that is why we are here. These guys do not listen. You tell them, Bella, if you're a young girl growing up at home, your mother tells you, don't do this, dress well, you have to take good care of yourself. You do not listen. You will go out there and strangers will start calling you and start advising you. That is what President Nana Addo is doing now. All the things we told him, reduce the borrowing. Don't borrow to spend. Your flagship program, review them. Let's get value for money. He did not listen. Today, a stranger, and IMF is telling him, and he's quickly adhering to them. Because civil society said them, because President Mahama said them, he will not listen. Is he ruling for himself, or he's the president of a country?
Is it the same thing we're seeing with regards to even the free SHS? Because we've heard from the
exactly
information
the
minister.
point.
Now he says that all 16 flagship programs
must be reviewed.
But Lerato here says that she does not
even
necessarily
with free
agree
SHS,
with the IMF
His
statement.
Royal Majesty, the Otumfuo.
Okay, but you said it's not poorly targeted.
You said, that was
I read that statement. You said,
that was in the targeting.
Okay.
But I agree to the review. You can't have a program in
Mela, His Royal Majesty said we need to review this free SHS program. President Mahama said it. Civil society organizations said it. We all said it. Even where parents have to go and gather at Independence Square and praying for computer placement. And we said a whole lot. Mela, we want quality. When you speak to professors or those in academia, lecturers, they will tell you that the free SHS product, when they come, Bella, if you are teaching them, you have to teach them like you are teaching an SHS student, even in the university. That is the pain lecturers are going through. Who said that it's not good to educate the Ghanaian child? But how does it serve the purpose? Or how do we gain by spending millions of money? I think about 4% of our debt to our GDP goes into free, and yet we are not getting the quality that is required. Bella, are we not damaging or destroying the human resource capacity of this country? We are all Ghanaians, we are parents. Who will hate that? Who wouldn't love a child to go to school for free? But at the end of the day, if you go to school and you come back and you cannot even write your name, what is the point? If you come back and you cannot express yourself well, the students, first-year students that came home for Easter holidays, they are still at home. Bella, they are not even the 3 years that we enjoyed. There were lots of things that we couldn't even cover up. So if students are still at home and they cannot enjoy their 3-year period, Bella, what is the point in it? So when we call you to review your programs, let's sit down and dialogue. We told you about dialoguing. You never listened and you took us to IMF. We are still talking to this government and they do not listen. But you see, the painful thing is that the president does not read. So whatever reports that comes, whatever research or other well-meaning Ghanaians will come out with, he do not care about it. All that he has, that as I said, out of the abundance of the heart, the gentleman has an insatiable quest for borrowing because he wants to live big. And with all this, Mr. President, by the grace of God, he's playing his extra time. So all this borrowing, he might not even be there to even pay.
Where the extra time means what? His second term?
He's an old man. Bella, he's an old man, and the young people who are going to pay for this are telling you that, Mr. President, please behave like a daddy at home. Give us a future so that when you're not there, we can mention your name. You sit there and you still talk about borrowing when you have just 1 year to go, and they are telling me that it is not yet time. The IMF itself has said that by 2027, it's Mr. Nanado going to be the president of this country to steer the affairs of this country. So what are you telling me? You see, let's not dilly-dally with these things. Bella, we are going through a lot as a country. With this IMF conditionalities, Ghanaians are going to suffer the more. My pain is paying more tariffs, living this high standard of cost of living, yet your salary is not going up. Yet you don't even have the purchasing power. You understand? You are going through all this and you are not sympathizing with that or commensurate with the pain that we are going through. You want to talk about somebody not understanding comprehension. Your president does not read. And it's an embarrassment for always the hosts keep correcting him. Why? What is it?
Dr. Botchwey, I mean, there was even some confusion between the Ghana Education Service at one point and the Education Ministry, where, the GS had said that they were going to, or they were starting the process to, review the free SHS. Then the spokesperson for the Ministry of Education came out and said that, no, there's been no conversation about that. And in fact, he said, and I quote, that the Director General was drawing an analogy based on what he himself as a person has been doing in his office. At no point did he really make that emphatic statement, but he said this was more of a personal thing. So there's been conversations about whether free SHS in particular should be reviewed, it shouldn't be reviewed. Even the people involved in it directly didn't seem to be on the same page. Now we're at a point where the IMF has stated in their documents that it was poorly targeted. We're hearing from the information minister who says we're reviewing all our 16 flagship program. Did it have to take the IMF to let us realize that we had gotten to a point where we needed to review, our flagship programs because we weren't getting the results?
I think for the free SHS, first of all, free SHS was a good policy, but like most people have already said, it was we didn't implement it in a good way. Elsewhere in the world, I've been to school in Italy, and then I've been to France. I'm in Belgium now. They have free education, but nobody goes to boarding school. All the students are in their homes. They go to school with their own lunch and all that. So if, as a country, we are doing something that is free, I think what we were supposed to do was to give free education to those who are going on a day school. If you have the money to pay for boarding school, then it is okay for you to be to pay. But if you don't have the money to pay for boarding school, then you go for day school, and then you repay for your school fees. But paying for food in school, paying for accommodation, paying for school uniform, house dress, paying for past questions, those are things that I think we are not a country that will be able to afford those kind of luxury in the program. The director of the Educational Watch was saying that free SHS, the government spent about 70% of the money allocated to free SHS on food alone. So if you have to take only food alone from the free SHS, it means that we're going to have a lot of money that would have been used for other things. And we talk about the issue of opportunity cost. Once you have that money spent on free SHS, we can't use that same money on other things that would have been like revamping the Tama oil refinery, which would have cost us about 500,000 US dollars. The 5 years that we spent over 5 billion cedis on free SHS, 70% of that would have been like 3.6 billion, which would have been used to do some other productive stuff. So now that the IMF has said that we should review, we need to do a proper stakeholder consultation and then see what would be the best way forward. Because people who are able to pay for their awards in the private schools, and then you go to the SS and you say they are not going to, they should go to the school for free. People who are able to pay money for their awards to be posted to first grade school, they pay the amount of money they pay for their awards to be put into Presec, Prempeh College, and all those schools. It's way above the amount of money they would have used for the whole 3 years in their in the secondary schools.
The finance minister had said this in the early days.
Yes. The finance minister said in the early days, the problem with Ghana is that if there's a policy, if there's an idea from an opposition government, what we do is we just brush it off. Because it's not us who are going to do it, we just try to bastardize it. But if you are coming together as a nation and then having a proper consultation with one another, proper discussions on the way forward, I think this country will move forward. And it stems from all our dealings. Because President Kufuor even started free SHS in 2002 when I was in Form 2. He started with day students. He did it for just one term, but he started with day students. Borders were paying it. So the president, this government, when they started, they should have looked at the past, like what has happened in the past. And then I believe President Mahama also started with progressive free SHS when he started with day students. Would have started it slowly and then see how we could have financed these things. Before 2016 election, I think BBC asked President Akufo-Addo about how he's going to fund free SHS, and then he was saying that I have to tell that to my people. I have to tell that to my people. We should have thought through before we started all those kind of things, and then things like giving allowances to nurses and then teachers to go to training college. In previous years, I think it wasn't really, people were not really enticed to go to the nursing training school and then teacher training school. So you can entice them with those kind of allowances. I mean, they teach nursing and then nursing in the universities. They teach education in Winneba and then Cape Coast, but they don't get those kind of allowances. All those things are things that they are supposed to abolish. And now we have a situation where rotational nurses are talking about their allowances and all those things. We're supposed to, yes. So we have to do a whole lot of things, and people in Ghana like a lot of free things. There's nothing like free lunch. Once we use this money for this thing, the opportunity cost is that we cannot use that same money for something else. So
well, if you say people, I mean, it's the same people who are now saying that our kids are not getting the education, the quality that we require. And so maybe it's time for you to review so that those of us who can afford it can actually pay, and then you use the little money that is left to take care of those who cannot necessarily afford it, right?
Yeah, so I think we should do it like the way people do it in the rest of the world.
Okay.
Like if you are going for day school, you can have it for free, but if you are going for boarding, you have to pay for food, because if your ward is in the house, you are going to feed that person who is in the house. So if you are going for boarding school, you have to pay for boarding, and then if people are not going to get money for the whole 3 months, you can get the payment spread out like on a monthly basis. So people can pay on a monthly basis. You don't have to pay like feeding for the whole 3 months. You can get the feeding every month, and then you spread out the cost.
Okay.
In that way, yeah.
And I think you agree with that, Lerato.
Look, Bella, just to go back to what Margot said about the government not listening, the president not listening. This is a story on 31st August 2002. When was
2022, you mean?
Yes, sorry, 2022. When was the IMF deal approved? A few days ago. Let me read just a paragraph. And it's captioned, "We should have a broader conversation on free SHS." And it says, President Akufo-Addo says he's open to a broader conversation on access to education, especially the free senior high school policy. The conversation, according to him, must look at funding, availability of money, access, and other ingredients that must work for the good of the Ghanaian. And this is a quote. One of the things people have been calling for is the review of free SHS. I think we should have a broader conversation about the incidence of education and our national development. Is this a president that doesn't listen? And you see, I still insist that comprehension is a problem for our compatriots.
But the education ministry, just to put this across as well, that same year in July, the education ministry, and in fact, it was the spokesperson who said this. He says the final responsibility to make any changes to the social intervention program lies in the bosom of the education ministry, which has not considered any such move.
Education ministry supervised by who?
By the president. But I'm saying that it's the education ministry. So but again, if they are saying this, hold on. If the education ministry is also saying that we have not considered any such move, and that's the problem.
Any such move, the fact that the conversation one faction was cancellation.
Hold on. No, it was about review. This was about review.
What was the conversation?
This was about review. Based on what? It was based on the GES Director General saying that they had started the process to review.
Yes.
And he says no, the ministry had not considered this.
I just read, and you said what? July what?
July 2022. But and my point is,
August.
Why is it that we have... Hold on.
Who appoints the minister?
Hold on, Lerato. Why do we have... This is the same government.
Yes.
Should you not be singing the same song? 1 minute we hear one thing from one faction, the president comes and says something else. Clear example, finance minister says we'll not go to IMF. President now sends a letter, says starts the process, and then we go into IMF. Finance minister says that we're going to look for internal ways to generate revenue so that we can take care of our own development. President says we're looking at going to the international market, because we're making global savings, or we'll look at making global savings so we can go. So there's always that confusion as to what one is saying as against what the president is saying. Should that not be a worry?
If I come on this show and you tell me we are going to discuss free SHS, and your producer says we should discuss let's say energy issues, which one are we discussing? Is it your topic or the production team?
We'll have to agree. The producer will not wait for me to come on air.
It's teamwork,
before.
Right?
Exactly, but that teamwork has to be done backdoor at least before you go on.
Exactly.
I get what you mean.
So all that is being
teamwork,
said, I've
you should agree.
I've given you a quotation,
you
not from
platform.
any government portal. This is from Joy Online portal. Right. This is what, and it's a quote. Conversation. He's open to a conversation. This review bit, and I told you, you can't have a program without consciously or unconsciously reviewing it periodically to make it better. Okay. And Mago said the president has a year to go. I'm sorry, but government is a continuum. So you see why the MPP needs to stay. Because the NDC believes that you can't do it. How do you build a nation like that? So you can't do yours and leave. You can't do yours and leave. It's really building an economy. It's picking an economy that was growing at 7 point something percent to 3 point something percent and give it back to the same people we took the economy from. That's the Bretton Wood institutions. Then I don't think our compatriots have any business coming into the governance issues of this country. This is a conversation we must have. We need to look at these policies and make them better for the benefit of children and their generations. We shouldn't just be thinking about elections. We should be thinking about the generations yet unborn.
Please land for me so we can.
The NDC will come and continue the governance of this country by not going back to the international market to go and borrow as quickly as President Anado is talking about. So if governance is continuing, we are no sound president will do this. Please. And the fact is that, Bella, where we are today, high cost of living, look at our free SHS you're talking about, poor feeding, students are sleeping on washroom cubicles, and all,
that's
you
a
see,
false story.
all these things,
That's a false story.
Yes.
In
it came out that I was
2019,
wrong.
in
That story
2019,
about
please
his
let me
being
land.
in the
In
top.
2019, President Mahama spoke about review, and they took him to the cleaners. That he said review meant cancellation. Why? President Anado's review is different from the review President Mahama knows or what? You see, they do not listen, and that is why we are here. I told you, very reasonable Ghanaians, Otumfo and the rest, they all spoke about reviewing. Yet these guys did not listen. And you have brought us here. You didn't listen. Now outsiders are advising you. And because you are a borrower, you are quickly coming back that you are now coming to review. So all the things that your people told you at home, you did not respect them, even including Otumfo calling you to review your free SHS. You did not respect the civil society that called you to cut down on your expenditure because you have high quest for borrowing.
Okay.
All this, Bella, I am pleading with Ghanaians. The point at which we are today, if IMF hadn't come in, if anything happens to us, they said even what we have at our reserve would just take us like 2 weeks to sustain this economy. A government that said a lot, yet came and did nothing but to destroy. I am pleading with Ghanaians. We need to come together and reason with civil society, reason with the reasonable men and women of this country, and vote out massively the MPP government out of office come 2024.
All right.
Let's all join the NDC and do this for Ghana.
Thank you so much.
We must build this nation by getting reasonable leaders.
Thank you, ladies.
We must build this country by getting reasonable
member
leaders.
of the communications team for the NDC. Thank you. Larato Musa Saka is a member of the communications team for the NPP, and Dr. Botchwey is an economist. Let me quickly say a happy birthday to the best and humble man. Your humanity, care for your subordinates. Even the security man is your friend. Your kindness is beyond measures. Continue being you. A man, ladies, please. Okay, a man full of vision. May God Almighty bless and protect you in all your endeavors. This is for Dr. John Tampuri, acting CEO of Whole Teaching Hospital. This is from patients and the pharmacy staff. And also a belated one, I was supposed to do this yesterday. Isaac, Ghana Education Service, please forgive me, but says, happy birthday to Akosua Abi of Get Fund Projects Department. This is from Kojo God in Ekropong, Ekuapem. And a big thank you going out to Nadine for styling me this morning. I'm representing Sudan. And well, of course, my name is Arifa Amani. And you can find Nadine's page on social media, Instagram. Arifa.
Okay.
Arifa Amani. Carter's Kaftans
Amani,
GH.
like the designer?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but this Amani means peace and safety. So I guess it's the same thing, right?
It's the
Okay.
same.
So you can find her on Instagram, actually, Carter's Kaftans GH. So it's Carter's CARTERS, Kaftans KAFTANS GH. Thank you so much. I'm wearing the Lafaya from the people of Sudan. And on that note, I'd like to say thank you so much. Lawyer Eduji Tamaklo had sent an earlier message. Thank you for that. He was explaining, of course, circling a part of the IMF conversation that... No, hold on. So, lawyer, thank you so much. Sorry I couldn't read it, but we have to go. We have more coming up right here on TV3 New Day. Don't go anywhere. Thank you so much for joining us.